Hey, Eagle fans, I'm Thomas Mott. Welcome into Philadelphia Eagles Now. We're going to jump into my top 5 Eagle camp standouts. We did a video like a month and a half ago predicting this, like breakout candidates, who's going to actually perform well in training camp, and it's going to be fun to go ahead and go to who actually has performed well in training camp, because a lot of players have played well. A lot of guys on this list you're going to recognize. We talked about a lot here on the channel, but there are some that you're going to be surprised to have had really good preseason training camps so far for our Philadelphia Eagles. Number one is, of course, the guy that we all cannot get enough of, and that is the wide receiver, Quez Watkins. Quez Watkins has had an incredible camp. Watkins has dominated camp. It's just that simple. Quez Watkins came in as a fringe wide receiver, a guy who I would not have thought would make the roster. I remember doing a whole roster breakdown, and it was like, well, Quez Watkins, he's not going to make the roster. It's probably going to be John Hightower, or J. Whiteside, or Travis Fulgham, and yet here we are. Watkins is probably going to be wide receiver 3. Like, he's not listed as your third wide receiver on the current Eagles depth chart, but right now, he is going to be the third wide receiver on this football team. The issue that Philadelphia is having is that Travis Fulgham, J.J. Whiteside, and John Hightower are all struggling so far in training camp. Fulgham was supposed to be wide receiver number 3, and yet he has had a bad training camp. So maybe we get into a little bad training camp here in today's video as well. We want to talk about yin and yang here, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good has been Quez Watkins. He has been absolutely fantastic, and the struggle bus right now has been Travis Fulgham, and then the ugly, I would say, would go ahead and be J.J. Whiteside, who I don't think is going to make the roster, but maybe they do just because they're praying he's going to eventually turn out to be good, but the ship seems to have sailed on that one. Watkins is number 1. He has been an absolute standout stud so far for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I cannot wait to see him play. I mean, I honestly, he is like I'm pumped for Devontae Smith, but I'm more pumped, maybe a little bit it's close. Quez Watkins is going to have a great year. I know you guys are pumped for that. Let me ask you guys this. Would you draft Watkins on your fantasy football team? Like, if you're in a fantasy league and you're the only Eagles fan, this could be an absolute steal. If you will draft Quez Watkins, or you would have drafted Quez Watkins, type Y down below for yes. If you are not going to draft Quez Watkins, you don't trust or believe in him, then go ahead and go down below and type N down below for no. As a pinned comment down below in the comments section, get to a YouTube ad break right now. Just go down below and answer this pinned comment in the comments section. All right, number 2 on my list here of the Eagles' best camp standout players. How about Jordan Howard? How about a guy who we just kind of forgot about, right? He had that great run in Philadelphia a couple of years ago. They let him go. He does nothing with the rest of his career. They bring him back last year. He does nothing in Philadelphia. And then we think he's going to be an easy-cut candidate, and yet he's had a great camp. He even started the first preseason game. Like, Miles Sanders is clearly your starting running back on this roster, but Howard can still play. And that's something that we must acknowledge and note when we're talking about camp standout players, that Jordan Howard has had an absolutely fantastic camp. I think he's close to being ahead of Boston Scott, and he's close to being ahead of, for sure, Kenny Gainwell on this depth chart. I know things are going to get moved around right now. I think in the end, not as it currently stands, in the end, Howard might be the number 2 back, because you have the elusive, the fast, the great pass catcher in Miles Sanders, but Jordan Howard is a short yardage power back. You turn and you give the ball to him on third down and short or goal line situations. And Philadelphia had a lot of those last year and expects to have a lot of them this year as well. I think Howard is probably going to be running back number 2, and that's a massive camp accomplishment and standout for a guy who was, 4th on the roster? 5th on the depth chart? I mean, he was behind Gainwell. He was behind Kerryon Johnson, my former beloved running back who turned out to not be good. He was behind, obviously, Boston Scott. He was behind maybe even Elijah Holyfield on some people's depth charts, and yet here we go with Jordan Howard. He has been very impressive. Shout out to him for being a camp standout player. Let me ask you guys this. Who will be the number 2 running back on this roster behind Miles Sanders? I'll leave it open, right? Is it going to be Howard? Is it going to be Boston Scott? Is it going to go ahead and be Kenny Gainwell? Is it somebody else? Like, Sanders is going to be number 1. Who is going to be the number 2 running back on this roster? Let me know who you think that is down below right now in the comment section. Now, before we want to keep going here, quick shout out to our friends at BetUS and the promo that still is available. People are asking me on Twitter, at RealThomasMod, is this still up? Yes, it is. Chatsports.com/EaglesBet. Promo code is Eagles125 to get that 125% deposit bonus whenever you first sign up. So just go up to Google, right above me, somewhere over here, and search chatsports.com/EaglesBet. Put your $100 deposit down, use the promo code Eagles125, and it turns into $225 for you guys to bet on whatever you want, including all the great odds for Philadelphia. We know they're dark horses. We know that the odds makers have them as the worst team in the NFC East. They have Jalen Hurts as, he's not going to be very good, and yet dark horse MVP for Jalen Hurts, plus 5,000. You put down $100, you win $5,000 if Jalen Hurts wins or he wins MVP in the National Football League. Long shot, I know, but chance to win some money nonetheless. All right, next player on our list here, Jordan Mailata. Jordan Mailata has had an incredible camp. It's been so good. I'd extend Jordan Mailata today. Like, I would literally give him starting left tackle money today. And you're going to say that's crazy. And I get it. He hasn't played a single down this season, and he was a little wishy-washy last year, even though he showed a lot of potential. He's been that good at training camp so far. So good that there never really was a competition between him and Andre Dillard. They said there was. Dillard never got close. I mean, this was never going to be a down-to-the-wire, just a game-time decision on who's going to be the starting left tackle. It was Mailata's from day one. Now, of course, Andre Dillard has since had a left knee injury, but I think that right now, Mailata has had one of the better camps of all the offensive linemen, and goes to show that this entire offensive line group is going to be good this year. They are going to be a very good offensive line unit, and it starts with the left tackle spot in Jordan Mailata. Now, is he perfect? Is he going to roll out here and be the best left tackle in the league? No. But he's going to be good enough to earn an extension. I think the longer Philadelphia waits, the more expensive he's going to get. And here's a guy who signed for next to nothing when he was picked up off of an Australian rugby football team and taught the basics of the National Football League. I mean, he's made, a lot of money compared to us, but very little money from left tackle perspective. But if you sign him now, you can get him to a fair contract, but a team-friendly contract, because Mailata, I don't think, was ever expecting to make this much money in the National Football League. We mentioned Dillard. They're probably going to trade Dillard. We talked about it last week. They've had trade calls about Andre Dillard, so I'd expect him to be moved or kept as a depth exception if Philadelphia is worried about having a little bit of depth issues at the left tackle position. Okay, number 4 on my list here of Eagle Camp standout players. How about Alex Singleton? How about Alex Singleton has had a really good camp. And Singleton is such a good story, too, because he is a guy who is a practice squad guy. He is a guy who was a special teams guy. He is a guy who was just thrown into a linebacker spot last year when people thought he was going to be terrible, and yet Alex Singleton is nothing but a tackling machine. I mean, that's what Alex Singleton does. This linebacking core, much like the offensive line group, is going to be very good this year. Not just the addition of Eric Wilson. I think TJ Edwards, or whether it's Jannard Avery or Sean Bradley, whoever starts the opposite side of the other two starting linebackers, but Singleton has been the best linebacker in camp. Everything we keep hearing is that Alex Singleton has been an absolute machine, and it goes to show that when you're an underdog in the National Football League and you start to play well, it's just a snowball effect, because no one expects you to do well. Maybe even last year, people in Philadelphia were harping on him a little bit because he wasn't playing that great, and now he's, in my opinion, the best linebacker on this football team, not named Eric Wilson. Might even be better. I mean, I know it's a stretch, but this is a guy who tackles non-stop. I mean, he hustles to every single play. He's had some time in preseason, and they love what they've seen so far in Alex Singleton. I'm pumped to see what he can do, and this all comes off the fact that he had COVID for 10 days and was out. He's one of those breakthrough, double vax COVID situations, and yet he was able to return to camp and be good to go. Shout out to Alex Singleton for being a baller so far in training camp. Okay, before we get into my 5th standout training camp player, also on the defensive side of the football, make sure you guys are subscribed to Philadelphia Eagles Now. Plenty more coverage coming up the next couple of days and weeks as the Eagles get ready for their final preseason game against the Jets, where we expect the starters to play at least a little bit as a dress rehearsal game, as well as the final roster cuts that are coming as well. Make sure you guys go down below and are subscribed to the channel. Okay, before we go ahead and finish up here, let's get to number 5, and that is Josh Sweat. No one's talking about Josh Sweat right now. Nobody is talking about Josh Sweat. He's had a great camp, and that needs to be known because people just haven't really mentioned the defensive line. Like, Javon Hargrave has gotten some love. Brandon Graham has gotten some love. Ryan Kerrigan's been out with a hand injury, so we talked about him a little bit, but no one's talked about Josh Sweat. He's had an absolutely fantastic camp so far. I think he will be the starter opposite of Brandon Graham when the time comes around, even though they're going to mix people in there, and it could be Barnett, it could be Kerrigan. I mean, it's going to be a fluid situation on the defensive line. But Sweat is a guy going into what is essentially a contract year who the Eagles are absolutely through the moon on right now, and I think he's going to have 8 to 10 sacks this year. I think he is going to be maybe the leading sack guy on the the Philadelphia Eagles. It could be Brandon Graham. It probably should be Brandon Graham, but I might put my money towards Josh Sweat because Josh Sweat has had just an absolute beast of a camp to the point that Derek Barnett's hardly been mentioned. And, Derek Barnett, the odds of him being re-signed in Philadelphia, unless he has a breakout season, is unlikely. Sweat is going to get that contract extension. He's going to be a starter in Philadelphia for a long time. He was a star recruit. He was a great player at FSU. He always had injury problems, and yet he's one of those rare cases where you draft a guy who should have gone higher later on in the NFL draft, who has knee issues, who so far, we knock on wood, fingers crossed, has been healthy, and that's a big plus there for Josh Sweat. Okay, ultimate update day here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Jumping into, of course, all of my top 5 camp standouts so far, as we are almost done with training camp. That's why I want to jump on here and give you my list. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Again, plenty of great content coming up the next couple of days and weeks, all for your viewing and listening pleasure. We appreciate every single 20,100 of you guys that are subscribed to this channel. Make sure you guys go down below and subscribe today to be a part of the growing Eagle community that we have here on the channel. ultimate word of the day here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. I'm your host, Thomas Mott, as we go ahead and sign off. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the rest of your day.